Lee Rosen joins me today from the RCMP's Operational Command Center in Regina. They take all the calls that come into the center, including 911 calls. They compile a list in January to talk about the top 10 most outstanding calls or most notable calls. And Lee, can you tell me which ones stand out for you?
The one that was most surprising for me was the one that came out as number one, where somebody called in to 911 and was complaining about how strong the deep fried food smell was in the rink they were in. And I remember saying to the room that day, I wasn't working that day that call came in, but the team I happened to be working with was, and they said, yeah, he was mad because the smell was too strong. And of course, that begs the question, okay, what do you want an RCMP officer to do about that? And of course, I'm a homegrown Saskatchewan farm girl. So my go-to answer is, well, that's the second reason you go to a hockey rink. First, you go for the sports, whether it's curling, hockey, ringette. The second thing you're going there for is the rink food. Come on, you're complaining about the smell of onion rings, and it's a 911 call. And as 911 operators, it's incredibly frustrating because there are people, you could be tying up a line for somebody who has an actual emergency. And how in anyone's universe is the smell of deep fried food an emergency? Now, having said that, I do want people to understand that as 911 operators, we still have to go through the motions to make sure this person isn't having a medical crisis. Are they making sense? Do they maybe presenting, they could have been involved in a car accident and they think that, so we still have to process the calls and make sure there actually is not an emergency. But no, it was just the smell of deep fried food in the rink they were in.
Do you see a certain number that are outright prank calls to the call center?
There are people that do that. They think it's funny. It's not. It's an abuse of the system. There's a summary offense charge under the Emergency 911 Act, and there can be fines of up to $2,000 for it. You need to understand that when you call 911, whether it's from your cell phone or whether it's from your landline, we know your location. So we can find out, investigators can, who place the calls. Not always, because there might be, a big uncertainty as far as where the actual cell phone is and how many people are at the scene, but we have the location and we need that information, because if somebody can't speak and you call 911, we know at least where police or ambulance or paramedics or firefighters need to go.
I do know that you are a very busy call center for the entire province. Can you tell me about the numbers?
Our calls for service total went down a little bit in 2023. So in 2022, we had just about 353,000 calls into the 911, into our communication center. Now, keep in mind, that's not all 911 calls. That can be everything from, I lost my ticket, I need to schedule a criminal record check, what time is the detachment open, that sort of thing. But it also intermixed in there are the 911 calls. So in 2023, we had 352,000, just about 352,700 calls for service in Saskatchewan. Of those, it was almost 73,000 911 calls. We're a busy center. We're a really busy center. So there's always a phone ringing. There's always a radio ringing that needs to be answered as well. So we want to educate the public on the proper use of 911. It's there for a reason. It's not, and it's there for convenience, but it's not there for abuse.
Do you get a certain number of calls, Lee, from people who may just be lonely and want someone to talk to?
When something like that happens, many times when it comes in like that, it's more of a medical call. I think that our fellow paramedic dispatchers may experience that more than us, but absolutely. And when it comes to looking after the more vulnerable in our communities, we can certainly send an officer out there to do an assessment just to make sure they're okay, and that, there's no sort of abuse or there's no sort of neglect, or if they need to be checked on a wellness check, and we understand that.
Lee, do you have any final thoughts on the calls that you get at the center?
It is 3 points. Number one, if you're not sure if it's an emergency, you're not quite sure, probably isn't. So if you're not sure if it's an emergency and you called 911, honestly, it's okay. We're still going to get you the help that you need. But if you have to sit there and go, I don't know if this is an emergency or not, it's not. You do not have to remember the phone number to your detachment. You don't. You can remember, all you have to remember is 310 RCMP. That's 310-7267. Don't have to dial 1, don't have to dial 306. 310-7267, and that'll get you to the communication center 24/7, 365 days a year. And if you're really not sure if it's an emergency or not, 310 RCMP is the way to go.
Well, thank you for your time today, Lee. I do appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity. It was so good to see you again.